below.
Oh my gosh.
The low is 40 below.
Oh,
And it's gonna be that way for 2-3 days, like, just like that.
we're at 18.
Really feel better about this.
18 above.
Yeah,
Like Weiner.
nothing between Havre and the North Pole and Rolling Hills.
All right. Welcome, everyone. We will call the meeting to order. Got to travel as many times as possible here. Welcome. It's great to see so many folks in person. Woody, I'm glad you could join us virtually.
Glad to be here.
We have a good meeting today. We're getting set for the year. We have some elections. We're going to set our schedule. We're trying something new with the daytime meeting. So it's great to see so many staff here and to get to see some faces that have been virtual for the last, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years now, it feels like. So appreciate everyone being here and looking forward to the meeting. Let's kick it off with our roll call. I'll just go through. Alan Alexander.
Here.
Woody Dukes.
Present.
Rick Hartwig.
Here.
Al Holland.
Here.
Joan Lloyd
Is attempting to join.
All right,
Yeah.
attempting to join. I'm here. Debbie Miller is.
Here.
There you are. Perfect. And then Keith Norris is absent today. For those on Zoom, just let us know if you have any trouble hearing us or seeing us on the board side. Rob did a great job reorganizing the room today, so you should be able to see everything pretty well, but just let us know if there's any kind of issues with feedback. With that, let's jump on into the approval of the December minutes. Do you folks have any edits or adjustments to the minutes before we move?
Move to adopt.
Move to adopt. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. We do a voice vote.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Passes. Gonna keep using that gavel. All right, let's go into public comment. We did get some written public comment. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review that. And I see we have Mark's iPad Pro here, who I'm gonna assume is Mark Wiggs. So I want to open it up. If there is, Mark, if you have a verbal comment you'd like to add to your written comment as well. And if yes, if you could start by introducing yourself as well, please. We're not hearing you, Mark, so I'm gonna assume that,
He raised his hand.
oh,
No, that's like this.
Oh,
yeah.
that's first.
All right, we will move on, but if it's just a technical issue, perhaps you could put something in the chat for us, but we do have the written comments, so we can quickly talk about those. Just as a refresher, Mark flagged some questions and concerns about park properties and multi-use and farmer engagement. I'm thinking about the leases. I think some of this I know is we've discussed in the past, and some of these relate to, Rob was telling me before that some of these leases are already being renegotiated based on the timelines that we're on right now. So some of this is very pertinent for staff to be considering. And then I think the other part of these will also come up as we think about our parks master plans and some of the other climate action plan processes of how we think about using farmland and complementary spaces throughout the city. But I'll open it up to any other board members if you have thoughts or comments that you'd like to share about the public comment we received.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
I was not terribly surprised and somewhat pleased in some regards that Mr. Wade brought up the notion, and for clarification, I think this is mostly, and what I'm addressing is relevant to the proposed construction of a walking path along the perimeter of leased property that is being partially used as farmland. Leased for farmland, with lease restrictions that say you can't go out there for recreation and stuff like that, to keep us from being able to do such a thing currently. And I think it's a great idea if the person leasing the land could be amenable to that limited encroachment along the perimeter. And indeed, I would think it might even help them if it might limit encroachment of varmints or anything into the farmland. I don't know, but if the people that are walking would be able to respect the land use for what it is and not encroach onto the farming end of it, without having to construct expensive fences and barricades separating the two, I think that would be great, but I could understand a farmer leasing land's concern about people wandering around loose onto their crops. So I don't know if it could be done on a trial basis to see if people would really do it just by doing nothing much more than laying out a bark dust path around the perimeter and seeing if they would behave. Or if a farmer would be willing to try that, or if the lease could be renegotiated with this in mind as a possibility in some way, if it can be done amenable to the leaser and how they're using it. I think it's just good sense and good utilization of property that, and we're hurting for enough land to do parks on anywhere. If we can make more park access, more walking in nature access, that's a good thing. But I understand it has to be done within the restrictions of a lease condition. And those are probably rightfully imposed, but I would encourage the thinking of this in negotiating new contracts with the possibility of a farmer being receptive to that kind of use.
Did you want to comment?
Yeah, I'll say from, I think staff's perspective, but we would, if we saw an opportunity to develop interim use in connection with agricultural use, we would pursue it. I think at this site, we see that perhaps we have a feasibility issue, just because of the topography. We would have to make sure that whatever we provide, with their bark dust trail is reasonably accessible to everyone in our community. So that includes those who maybe can't run up a really steep hill. Oh, there's someone at the door. Yeah. And we have to make sure that there's reasonable ways to access the property, that we're not creating nuisance for the neighbors. So there's a place that people can access the park from a sidewalk or from on-street parking or something like that. And I'm not sure that's feasible. We really have to look at that. And I'm talking specifically about Bryce Hill.
Yeah.
If it was helpful to the board, I could pull up just quickly our GIS system and we could look at the topography of the site together. What I want to highlight is this is not a flat property. This property has significant topography. So a perimeter loop may not be feasible in terms of a walking path. So we would have to really look at it and what would that mean? The lease isn't really the issue. The lease is there because it works for them, it works for us. If we need to modify that lease because we wanted to provide public use, we could certainly do that. Jen, is there anything you want to add to that or?
No, I think that just to keep in mind, anytime you develop any park property, even on an interim use, that relays to maintenance of that. So even bark dust, that's a cost to parks operation and for folks going out there. So anytime you add any kind of thing like that, there is an impact. Some are larger, some are smaller. But keeping in mind, especially as we're moving forward with the potential city budget implications, is this a time and is it a necessity to add even something like that when it may seem small, but it is still impactful to parks maintenance. So that's the only thing.
I read to consider. So I read the comment. It seemed like there were two issues. It was these concept about building temporary or rough trails and paths, but also the one about compensation for the use of the land. And I being somewhat familiar with the city, I noticed that there's checks and balances in the system. The city has a real estate office that does appraisals of what the property is worth. That sort of feeds into what a lease would. And so I think there's a fair amount of, I'd say, checks and balances in the system, so that I don't think anybody in the city has the absolute discretion just to decide who gets the lease and who pays for the lease and who doesn't. There's an established system to identify that. And so I'm not too sure how public that process is, but it's there and it's been working for some time. Two different organizations are dealing with it to arrive upon a fair and reasonable release rate.
You're correct. We don't initiate that. There is the real estate portion. They're under urban development, and they're the ones who initiate in those lease and calculate fees and all of those kinds of things. That's not something we initiate and take the lead on. So So you're right, there is another department, real estate division that's involved with that for us.
I just highlighted real quick here that the property is composed of these two tax lots that I'm highlighting here. And these are 10-foot contours. So, you know, here we are at elevation 460 right here. And here at the highest point we're, you know, 510. We're almost to 550. So we have, you know, almost over 100 feet of elevation gain on the property from its lowest point to its highest point. So it is not a flat site in any means. And so, you know, the idea that we, you know, there is a shared driveway access that skirts the east part of the property. You know, if we wanted to create a trail from here, this is a very steep area here. So, you know, you're at 490, that's 10 feet, 20, 30 feet elevation gain in a very short span right here. And so that's what I'm concerned about, creating a sustainable, accessible trail. I'm not sure this is the spot we could do it. We would really need to have some meandering path that would switch back across the property.
All right, well, thank you for that. We are still in public comment period. Did you, okay, so to make sure you came in at the right time for the opportunity. Any further comments? Rick, are you good? Okay, just want to make sure. All right, well, thank you. And I know that we are going to be moving into things like the Parks Master Plan and thinking about the Climate Action Plan and things like this. So there are going to be continued opportunities for us to discuss this. So I thank you, Mark Wake, for sharing this feedback, and it's something we can continue to keep in mind as we think about future leases and properties. Council liaison updates. I don't believe we have Councilor Varney with us today, so we will skip past that one. But I would just note, as always, that Councilor Varney is always willing to talk to all of us. So if you all have thoughts or questions for council, you know, bring it through to Brad or reach out to her directly. We'll move into our board items and presentations today. So we have a couple items here in terms of the election. We need to close the nominations, and then we need to have an election of officers to start. As a reminder, at the last meeting, we put forth a couple nominations, and so the nominations sitting so far are for Keith Norris to take over as chair, and then I would move into vice chair. At this time, we can hear if there's anyone else that would like to offer up their name for either the chair or vice chair position. Hearing none. Do we need to formally do a vote to close the nomination? So I think we. Oh, that's true. To the votes, don't worry. So we can start with the chair role. So the nomination to have Keith Norris take over as chair, I move to have Keith Norris be elected as chair. Is there a second for that?
I second that.
Seconded. All right, do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go through a voice vote here. Alan Alexander.
Aye.
Woody Dukes.
Aye.
Rick Hartwig.
Aye.
Al Holland. Joan Lloyd. Joan, are you able to come off mute to vote yet? Yay or nay? Oh, she did thumbs up or thumbs up. I think there's a little lag on Joan's, so hopefully you'll hear us in a moment here, Joan. It looks like you're connecting to audio. Debbie Miller.
Aye.
I vote aye, and then Joan, if you can thumbs up if you're a yes. Hold it open for just a second here. Joan, can you hear us now? Might have some issues. We do have a majority vote, so I'm going to call the vote closed and that Keith has been elected as chair. Keith not being here tonight, I will continue going through the election here. So then the other nomination was to move me into the vice chair position. So I
Second.
need that. If you would like to make the initial motion, probably be best practice for me. Not to
Oh, okay.
Myself.
I moved Dylan Rose to vice chair position.
Wonderful.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, we'll do another quick voice vote here. Alan Alexander.
Aye.
Woody Dukes.
Aye.
Rick Hartwig.
Aye.
Al Holland.
Aye.
Joan Lloyd. And feel free to thumbs up, Joan, if you can hear us this time. All right, we might still have some tech issues there. I vote aye, and then Debbie Miller.
Aye.
All right, it's official, and to give Rob some credit here, he came prepared. Rob is ready for the transition.
Oh, Rob.
So, Leanne. So,
I'd like to say thank you, Dan, for being able to continue on in this position and to Keith as well, of course, but this is helpful to have that experience and continuity. Thank you.
well, thank you all. I appreciate the trust and the opportunity. I really enjoy it. I know Keith enjoys it too, and I think we're gonna have a great year, and it's really fun to be back in person to see you all.
I would like to make a mention of, you've been doing this for a while and I appreciate that. But at some point in time, you're gonna have to leave like all of us have to.
Yes.
And I'm not too sure when that is, but I would hope that this next year you would take an opportunity to perhaps cultivate some of the other board members who have more tenure so that they'll be ready to move in those positions sometime in the future. Even though it's only you say a volunteer board, there's a lot of moving parts. I know, I've been on several of them. And so a person who has interest in to put themselves forward, or themselves forward, it's nice to have some background as to how the board works, how the city works. So you could be a big help, particularly this next year, even some of those other members might find themselves in that position in the future.
It's a really well taken point, Alan. I think that's right. I think hopefully we can have some really good opportunities in the next year, whether it's subcommittees or research projects
Yes.
or things like the U of O project where some of other board members can step into those roles, or lift up leadership opportunities. Also have more and more folks joining maybe some of the conversations, be ready to step into chair and vice chair.
And I'm encouraged, but us looking at each other face to face again, that builds more opportunity for that.
Very well noted. And I appreciate that. And I think that's definitely something we want to keep considering and make sure that we build a strong board where everyone feels included and ready to take on new opportunities as they rise. All right. With that, we will move in. We have a few more kind of housekeeping items here. One is adopting the meeting schedule for 2024. As a reminder, in December, we adopted this meeting and then we needed to adopt the rest of the year in the current calendar year, so today. The one note is that the agenda is in your packets, but the February date is listed incorrectly. It should be the 8th, not the 15th. And that was just a simple mistake there. So that's the adjustment to the schedule. And if everyone's comfortable with continuing with this time, place, and logistics of the hybrid meeting and that schedule, we'll need a motion to
I'll
adopt
make
as,
that motion to be adopted with the minor correction.
all right?
Are all of these the second Thursday of the month?
Correct.
Thank you.
Al, is that are you seconding that as well? We have the
Yeah.
motion on the table?
There's a second for that. That's clarification. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion or clarification? All right, we can do a quick roll call vote for this as well. We got a few votes today. Alan Alexander, Woody,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Al Holland,
Aye.
Joan Lloyd. All right, I vote aye. And Debbie?
Aye.
All right. Perfect. The schedule, the calendar is adopted. So next, we can go into our annual report to City Council. I believe we're targeting February 12th. Is that correct? Okay. So we are looking at February 12th to present the council. This was brought forward last time briefly, and it was sent out for folks. We've really shrunk the report this year to try and make it a little bit more digestible, focus on some of the high points of what we worked on this year, which is still quite a bit, I should say over the last year. Rob, is it easy enough to pull it up for folks just in case they have any comments they'd like to share?
I will.
And so essentially this will be sent out to council ahead of the presentation, and then I'll be going there and giving a PowerPoint presentation that essentially mirrors these takeaways of the work that we did. So I'm curious if folks have any thoughts, comments, or feedback before we formally approve this, and then we can distribute it to members of council. And it's being pulled up right now. And Debbie, I see your hands up. The camera's a little bit off. There you go. Go ahead.
I just thought it looked great. I really saw the highlights of what we'd done, and I thought that was very encouraging and looked like we'd done a lot this year. And I like the way it's so concise. It's more likely to be read, and I thought it looked great.
Yeah, it's great. I like it a lot. It's a lot shorter than last year's.
And my only concern is that council will think we haven't done as much.
I don't think so.
It's possible, but
Yeah.
hopefully in this case, they actually read it. So
Yeah.
that's a win in that sense.
Those 3 pages, they must have been very active.
Yeah, that's true. But I think hopefully when I give the verbal report and talk through some of these, that'll be a chance to really augment and build on the content we have. Any other comments or thoughts before we move to approve?
I just wanted to maybe get a little bit more information on the joint University of Oregon Sustainable City Program events.
Yes,
I missed something out.
I think that was a meeting you missed. Yes. Rob, is it okay if I turn it over to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's brief.
Yeah, the city is very fortunate to have a partnership with the University of Oregon through the program called the Sustainable City Year Program. And so this university picks a city in Oregon every year to dedicate significant portions of their curriculum, student work to support initiatives in that city. And this is Salem's second year doing this program. We did 10 years ago, and this is we're back for a second year. And there are many courses that are dedicating their focus to the city, and quite a few are focused on a park-related issue. I think that we're up to about 5 at the moment.
Gee, I wonder if I could get one of them focusing on a bike route to Kaiser along the river.
I'd have to actually follow up with you. There may be a course looking at active transportation. I'm not.
Yeah, I know that they did last time.
Yeah.
There were some transportation sustainability issues there that were good. Like we've seen some implemented. I'd be interested. I'll look into it. Thank you.
Yeah, but those 5, just real quick, in the fall quarter, we had Timber Tectonics and the Digital Age, and they looked at basically a temporary picnic shelter that could potentially be deployed in our parks.
Yeah.
In this current winter quarter that just started, we have a social justice course in the School of Design and specific landscape architecture staff. So the students will be looking at how we could draw service areas around our parks to help us think about equity and how we deliver park improvements and resources throughout the city. So how we draw service areas around our parks, that's what they're looking at specifically. And then with that same professor in the spring, they'll be looking at a way to assess the condition of our park infrastructure. So right now we have an asset inventory. We know what we own, but we don't have a good way of rating the condition of our assets. We'll be looking at that. There's the potential that through a partnership with Portland State University, that we might have a civil engineering course looking at designs for putting a boardwalk bypass into Minto Brown Island Park, where we have a trail that's frequently flooded by beaver. So they would be looking at a design concept for a boardwalk. And the final one is escaping me, but if I think about it, I'll let you know. So these are really, I think, really fantastic projects all focused on our park system.
Beaver Trail, that's huge.
Yeah.
I know that stretch.
Yes,
Yes.
I know that stretch. It's always flooded in high water.
yeah, it's flooded so much of the year now. That would be great.
And just on that topic, on a separate side note, our congressional delegation, and which is led by our mayor, is going to Washington later this month, and they will be talking, or our mayor will be talking to our congressional delegation about potentially getting congressionally delegated funding for a boardwalk to address this issue. So that's a discussion that will be occurring later this month, hopefully. So that's a congressionally delegated spending is the current term for what used to be called earmarks. So that is exciting news as well.
How much does a boardwalk cost that it needs that level of investment?
We are actively working on a cost estimate for it today. It's going to be less than $5 million probably to the quarter-mile boardwalk, but it will be multiple millions of dollars.
Really?
Mhm.
What makes it so expensive?
The cost of construction is quite high this day, but we are looking at, of course, a facility that could support bicycles and pedestrians. And frankly, what we're doing is we're talking to some of our consultants that have developed similar facilities in other communities, and we've already heard from them. It is a multi-million-dollar project. And beyond that, we're working on a cost estimate with them, so we have more details, so I can give you better answers soon. A lot of it is environmental permitting.
Yeah, interesting.
I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but it's not, it is a natural area.
And can you go back to the timeline on that, if that were to go through?
I think our only timeline right now is that we're asking for money, And then we have the student course that may look at conceptual designs. We have no,
But that's,
there is no
course
local.
you said would be in the spring, is that correct?
That course would be this winter. So
This
we're
winter,
actually
okay.
waiting to hear back if essentially in this class of civil engineers, if a group of them are interested in the project, they will take it up as their capstone project.
Gotcha,
They have a whole portfolio of ideas that the professors can present to them. This is just one of them.
understood.
So fingers crossed.
Rob, would one of the possible concepts or possibly include that boardwalk extension out to the wildlife observation platform that is on the stretch of the southern portion of that flooded?
So as it's scoped right now, it's a bypass to so it would kind of go more directly through the east field. And we wouldn't necessarily demo the existing asphalt path, but it would be more of a bypass. It would go to the west of the slough, more to the west. So
Okay.
it would really be a bypass. It'd be a new corridor. And I would say what we're doing is consistent with the Parks Master Plan. So the project we're exploring is identified in the Parks Master Plan.
Okay.
So
Good
that was-
question, Al.
Yeah.
That's very exciting.
It
How
is.
do we encourage the students to take that one on? That's been a troublesome area for a while. I always thought that could be like an Eagle Scout project, like $5 million. That's
a lot of troops.
A lot of troops.
And of course, I'll just not to dwell on this too much, but perhaps the least cost would be a timber structure.
Mhm.
Of course, that would put us in a position where we have constant maintenance
Yeah.
on the timber structure. So
Mm.
we're trying to be realistic about what we could maintain, and that is not a wood boardwalk.
That makes sense. I think, yes, we spent a bit of time on that, but I will know, I don't know about you all, but I hear about that one. Just people generally, and I experience it a lot. It's, why isn't there a fix for this? Because it's always flooded. I know there's the beaver concern. There's a lot that goes into it, but knowing that there's something that works is.
Yeah, it's an extra quarter mile detour.
Yes, yeah. So that's really good to know, and I appreciate you sharing that. All right, so I think we're back to a vote. I think about it. So we need a motion to adopt the draft annual report as presented.
Move to adopt.
Second. All right, any further discussion? We'll run through one more voice vote for the day. Alan Alexander,
Aye.
Woody Dukes,
Aye.
Rick Hartwig,
Aye.
Al Holland,
Aye.
Joan Lloyd. All right, Joan, you can thumbs up if you can hear us. Debbie Miller,
Aye.
I vote aye as well.
Well, now. You go. Aye.
I think you have a little bit of lag on your end or on our end, Joan. We're not able to hear you super clearly, but if you want to do thumbs up or put it in the chat, we're gonna assume that was a supportive comment.
Well, can you hear me now?
A little bit.
Aye.
Okay, we heard that. We got aye for the record.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, our next order of business is Bush's Pasture Park Heritage Tree Designation from Mylan. And I was notified that we're gonna be holding off on a vote for the day, but it'll be mostly presentation and information for today. So turn it over to you.
Not much presentation, just wanted to inform you guys. I'm sorry it's taken so long, I've been working on this for a little while, but we're in the process of hopefully improving our heritage tree program. And have been such for the last year or so, working with myself and Don and just doing I know we shared some information with you guys for historically over what it was in the past, how many trees we had, and sort of, what the history of that program was. And not much has been done to that in the last, let's say 10 years. And we definitely want to sort of encourage the public, internal staffing and other departments, if there are ways for us to designate trees as heritage trees, that we really want to focus on that. Moving forward, we've designated quite a few trees ourselves, the urban forestry staff with some park staff on trees that we want to identify. I think the highest priority one was this Oregon white oak grove that we have now brought to the attention of our roundtable of the Grand Ronde tribes, and they wanted to make some suggestions and changes to the literature or sort of the way that I've written it up. And also want to talk a little bit about how that would be managed as a grove, potentially if it was associated with any tribal past. And potentially I would need to talk with Jennifer and Rob on sort of what those things would be and how we would do that. I think some of the thoughts were maybe to do some programs related to how this grove would have been used by Native Americans with some camas, harvest potential, maybe the potential for cyclical or cycle burning under the groves, which is something that has been important to some of our natural resources staff in the past. But that would be working in association with the Salem Fire Department, and I have reached out to the fire department on multiple occasions, and they're interested in having those conversations. But again, I'd be talking with Jennifer about that, and then, you know, what that really looks like. So there's a lot going on. Maybe I pick the hardest one first. There's some other ones that we could just say, yes, these are gonna be heritage trees because of the history associated to the tree, the past. We have knowledge of certain individuals who either, you know, lived in Salem, worked in Salem, and were part of some of these important tree plantings in the past, and these trees are still around, and we want to recognize that. Important trees in the city. I know the new significant tree program has kind of changed the parameters, you know, all big trees over 30 inches are now protected, so it's not as big of a deal to get some of these trees protected in that way. But I think as far as culturally and to sort of signify that there are a lot of trees in Salem that have some really cool history around them. So there's more to come on this. They're looking at what I've proposed to them. They're gonna give some feedback, and I need internally, we need to talk about some things, and we'll come back to you guys soon. I won't put it on the agenda again until we're ready. Maybe 2 or 3 times, and Rob's like, no. And I was like, no.
Very basic question for you. Can you remind us all, what does it mean when something then gets designated as a heritage tree? Can you remind us what the?
Yeah, so the language is written for, in the past, we made heritage tree is something that has significant cultural value. It has a significant history, and we can identify that history or that there's something that's culturally connected to that. And some of this for the grove there is gonna be inside of the cultural resources document that was provided for Bush Park, and then just some general history that's associated with that grove. But some of the other things could be, you know, the pioneer tree at Bush Park. You know, there's documentation on certain trees that we know that this tree was planted by a certain individual at a certain time and what the meaning was. So really, there just has to be some sort of significant history or association with an individual, and we can recognize that as something significant to the residents of Salem, I think.
And how does it impact though in terms of removal, protection? I was trying to remember what, like you mentioned, there's significant trees and then now there's heritage trees. So how does this impact protection? Trying to remember the legal.
Yeah, if it's above the 30-inch mark, it's considered significant, it would be protected. But if it is a heritage tree, the protection is just that tree can't, you know, be damaged or removed based on the designation. But then it can be brought again to the board or again to the council if it's, let's say it's on private property and someone is moving or someone wants to take that designation away. That has been done recently for some trees as well, not recently, but maybe 12 years ago. The giant Theodore cedar got taken off the list just because it had been pruned improperly by the power company. But you know, somebody was trying to say something, but yeah, that's sort of, yeah.
Any questions or comments? Also for folks on Zoom, Mylan?
What must someone go through if they feel like need to remove a significant, not a heritage tree, but a significant tree? In other words, over 30 inches.
Yeah, if someone wants to remove a tree over 30 inches now, they have to work with the city of Salem's planning department. They have a new name. Not coming to
Community Planning and Development Department?
Something along those lines,
Yes.
yeah.
what was previously the city's planning department now under a new name. You have to come to them and provide a tree removal request. which then you have to fill out a permit and with an arborist report. And then they review that report and either they allow the removal of the tree based on the tree is damaging a foundation of a structure, or let's say the tree is in poor condition and they think it should be removed. And from time to time, they'll come to our staff and ask us to help them, look over these permits to see if it's a yes or no. If it's a no, the tree should stay, it's healthy, then you can't cut the tree down. If it's a yes, you are allowed to purchase a permit.
But that sounds like a pretty expensive option just to even consider it, let alone take it to remove the tree.
It's around a $400 permit, I think.
And just on their own private property.
Mm-hmm.
Milo, can you project your voice a little bit up?
Sure.
Comment.
Yeah.
Sure.
This is good information for a person who wants a substantial tree removed, but in West Salem, there are a number of trees on occasion that come down on occasion, tall Doug firs, sometimes with shallow roots in this wet weather. I've seen two, one on my neighbor's house. Is the potential risk of a fall from a 80, 100-foot, 200-year-old, 300-year-old Doug fir enough to warrant a permit if an owner wants to remove that risk?
Just with a subsequent report, that could be taken into consideration, but a report's written, given to planning will make that decision. Yeah.
If an arborist judges, well, this thing might fall one of these days, and give it a good storm, a reasonable storm, that might be reason, maybe,
Probably not.
probably not alone.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't allow that alone. Yeah, if they want to see significant decay or something wrong with the tree physically that would make them think, they're not going to say, oh, if another storm happens, we think this tree might fall. It's not just, that wouldn't be a typical.
Yeah, you need some substance to why.
Right,
Yeah.
typically.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from Island? All right, well, we'll wait to hear more, but thank you for that update and appreciate the information. All right, we'll move on to the Mitchell Island Conservation Area Management Plan update. Jen Mongolo and Jeffrey Jones. We have the nice podium. Smile. Pop up here. This little thing too.
We're gonna break it in.
Yeah, so, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Johnson. I am a natural resources planner here with the city. I spoke to you last month about Goal 5. I need to come and give you an update on the Minto Island Conservation Area Management Plan update. This is a map of the property here itself, the conservation area. As you can see, it's within Minto Brown Island Park. It's a 307-acre property. We have the Audubon Society property also on the island there with it, and then Riverfront Park. There have been restoration projects completed around it, the Willamette Riverside and in these portions of the property. And there's currently the Peter Courtney Bridge that runs across and through the property. Next slide, please. So this property was purchased in 2013. It used to be a Boise Cascade site. And so money was used from the Willamette Wildlife Mitigation Fund, which is a fund that was set up to help Bonneville Power mitigate the effects of all the dams on the rivers that feed into the main stem Willamette. And so it was purchased. There was an initial management plan completed in 2015 with public outreach and other internal outreach that took place. Since it's been approved, we had the Peter Courtney Bridge go in, which changed everything for the conservation area. We now see thousands of people using the conservation area on summer weekends. There's a lot of requests to do events that go through the conservation area. One big event that's come up is the Ironman event, which we know brings millions of dollars into the city. The management plan as written allows for one event with more than 1,000 people. And so we already had the Willamette Valley Marathon that was occurring. And so we requested and reached out to BPA to get a land use agreement signed to allow us to do a second event, which is the Ironman. As a condition of that land use agreement, they required us to update our management plan earlier than it's normally updated, which they wanted us to do it by this April. So we have since requested an extension to give us another year to allow us more time to really not just do a surface rewrite of this, but dig in, make changes to add that and updates. We're going to take information we learned along the way. Some of the things that were initially thought of as really good projects in 2015, there's some problems with them, so they don't really work out. So there's going to be some changing maybe of goals and specific project types. Next slide, please. So the primary changes in the management plan, there's a new template. And so they're requiring new information in the template. There's a lot of additional tables, new maps in there. There's new sections. We want to know what we've done so far, what we're doing right now, which is the interim management activities, public access and use, where we talk a lot about how the bridge has changed the use of the park and how it affects the conservation and values of the site, right? Are we protecting the habitat? Is this a wildlife first sort of place? They also want to know how we're adapting and monitoring things. And then there's a new section about how climate change is going to impact conservation values and what we need to do to consider those impacts as we move forward. During this time, we're hoping to change the event restrictions, adopt some new ones, again, based on lessons learned. And we also want to update the restoration actions, like I mentioned. For example, there's things in there about cutting down the Douglas fir plantation and restoring it. There's a poplar grove that was planted that was also part of that. Those ideas have they've lost momentum, and we know that maybe we might create more issues at the site by opening it up and removing things and allowing weeds and other things to come in. So it's just an example of some of the differences that we have to consider now. So yeah, with that, I'll turn it over to Jen.
Okay, next slide. I'm Jen Mongolo, Senior Natural Resources Planner. So just wanted to go over kind of if BPA, Bonneville Power Administration, who holds our conservation easement on the property, if they allow us the extension, this is kind of our tentative timeline and schedule for how this will roll out. Still in communications with them now on signing a new land use agreement, which will allow us to continue our current event restrictions through 2024 and give us another year to complete the land use management plan update, as Jeff mentioned. So hopefully we'll get that in place this year. Sorry, not this year, this month. And Jeff's already done a lot of work on updating the management plan. We're going to continue to work on that through the next few months. Then we'll reconvene our technical advisory committee that was involved in the drafting of the first plan and review of the first original plan. Where members have moved to different departments or retired, we'll bring in replacements for them. But a lot of people are still in their original roles from that time. So I think we'll have largely the same technical advisory committee review the plan updates. Throughout our update process, we will be in close communication with all of the agencies, Bonneville Power Administration, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. After we do the formal TAC review, though, we will give them a final copy of the plan to do their thorough review and approval of the plan. Expecting this summer that we'll be going through that formal review process, and then coming back to your board in the fall, late summer, fall, with an updated plan, go over what the major changes are, and hopefully get your support in recommending adoption to City Council. Then we'll take it to City Council, where we will both ask for adoption of the plan and adoption of new administrative rules for the Minto Island Conservation Area event restrictions. Currently, our event restrictions are for Minto Island Conservation Area are an administrative rule, and we'll have to actually update those again in the next month or two once we get a land use agreement signed, because those were set to expire at the end of 2023. So that's a rough timeline estimate. We are trying, even though we're asking for an extension through April of 2025 to give us a full year, I have told EPA that we're not gonna drag our feet. We're gonna try to get it done as fast as we can. But we did want that additional time because we weren't anticipating when they first pushed this on us. We thought it was just a minor change, and then they started telling us, oh, but we have this new template we want you to use. And then we looked at the template and we're like, oh, wait, this has a lot of sections that we never looked at before. So we are gonna be developing some new information, and that's the main reason we've asked for this extension.
Can you tell me something about what those agency grantor reviews involve and how difficult they would be, or are they likely to be routine?
I'll start from the bottom and go up. That's kind of reverse order of complexity. Department of Environmental Quality, they are involved because there was a remediation, this was a remediation site, and we had to protect soil, like spoils and contaminated soils before we were able to open the site up to the public. So in perpetuity, anytime we change our management on the site or do anything that could impact soils, we have to go through a routine review with Department of Environmental Quality to get their approval for them to say, this change in activity does not impact the soil, that's not going to cause any health issues for the public. That's a pretty routine review. Ironically, we have to pay DEQ to review our work that they're requiring us to give them to review. Department of Fish and Wildlife, they are more involved. They're probably the agency who understands the site the best, who has been on the ground the most, who does annual monitoring for the conservation easement. So since they're the most knowledgeable, I anticipate that their review will be thorough, but pretty streamlined. And then Bonneville Power Administration, the main easement holder, they have multiple different divisions that are going to have to review this from different angles. And that's where it gets complicated, and that's the part that's going to take longer. They have their natural specialists, and they have a realty team, and then they have their lawyers that all have to be reviewing this. And so that's the part that's probably going to hang us up the most, but we are going to work with them throughout from the start. Any major changes, we're going to run it by them, before it even gets out to the tech, to make sure we kind of have a green light to try to streamline that as much as possible when we get to that final review. Okay, so other questions on the next steps or timeline?
Could you just clarify again why BPA is the leaseholder? I was trying to go back to that map. How did they end up with that?
Rob, you want to go back to the map? I don't know if that helps at all, but so they are the conservation easement holder. It's not a lease, it's a conservation easement that prohibits certain uses on the property to maintain it. And
so that's all BPA land.
So this is our city of Salem, the orange area is city of Salem owned, but it has a conservation held by the Bonneville Power Administration to ensure that the city of Salem in perpetuity manages this area as wildlife habitat primarily. So for conservation purposes, and public use of it is a secondary use of the property under our conservation easement. The reason they have a conservation easement on the property is because they gave us the money to purchase it. So that Willamette Wildlife Mitigation Program, the WWMP program, is funded through Bonneville Power Administration mitigation funds. We asked them for a grant to purchase this property, and as a condition of that grant, we had to put a conservation easement on there that they hold. Makes sense. Great questions. So the next slide is just kind of some tangential related updates that I wanted to just give you while I was here. But if are there any other questions about the my management plan update before I move into some other updates on what's going on in MICA? Okay. So, oh wait, did I see a hand up on the screen, or did I imagine
Yes.
that?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. What kind of mitigation strategies do you think they're going to recommend because of the additional use of the area? Like, what kind of things do you think they'll expect the city to do?
That's a great question. We've already kind of been working through this each year that the Ironman Triathlon has been going through the conservation area. So we started working already on some mitigation strategies. One of those is establishing a better natural trail buffer along the main paved path So that's been a big project that we started last year. We've been planting native plants on 25 feet on either side of the paved trail that these events are using and that the public is using when they're in the conservation area to provide a screen, kind of protective buffer for wildlife. And from noise and visual disturbance for wildlife that are down below in those fields in the ponds. And another thing that we've been doing is biological monitoring during events. We've hired consultants 2 years in a row to go out and monitor during larger events and a mix of different size events so that we can evaluate what the impacts in reality are on wildlife. And we're not really seeing a lot of impacts, very temporary, short-lived. Birds fly out of the area, they come back almost immediately. And even some birds nesting right on the trail within a few feet of the trail with an active nest didn't even leave their nest as the Ironman runners were going by. So we're seeing very low impact. So that's something that we've done to be able to show BPA that we're trying very hard to be protective of resources and we want to understand the real situation. Any other kind of mitigation actions that we've been thinking of or that we might do? I think we might increase our monitoring a bit.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
it. And then development of this new plan.
Yeah. So I think the main thing is just going to be maintaining that trail buffer and expanding the trail buffer with native vegetation is going to be that's their main piece that they've asked for.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that was actually one of my related updates, the Minto Island Conservation Area trail buffer. We planted that in winter of 2022. And we just did a supplemental planting recently. We did throughout the summer, a lot of maintenance work, watering, removal of invasive plants, and both by hand and herbicide throughout the year. That will continue this year and for many future years until it gets established. Yes.
Were the elderberries in there? One of the ones that were planted?
Yeah, so the elderberry, I think some of those larger plants were planted previously through a Friends of Trees planting event that was maybe 5 years ago or so. And they were kind of overgrown by all the invasives, so we didn't really see them. When we had them go out and do the first clear out of invasives along the trail buffer, we did go out in advance and notice that there were some struggling native shrubs still out there, and we had them flag those and protect them when they were cutting back invasives, and they have come back so beautifully. They're really filling in nicely.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So yeah, look for continued work in the trail buffer moving forward. We did get with pretty much a lot of help with Rob carrying the load on getting some event fees in place so that we can charge special event fees for use of the Minto Island Conservation Area. This is really, I'm really happy about this because we have a stewardship account that is being depleted by maintaining this trail buffer, and we don't have any money going back into it. So now we'll at least have some revenue going back into our stewardship account to help us continue to maintain our natural habitat. Our Willamette Slough Ludwigia removal grant was completed in 2023, and we will be working on our final grant report with Willamette Riverkeeper here soon. Wrapping that up and moving forward, we'll be looking for volunteer events to go out and hand remove any recurrences of Ludwigia or opportunities for partnerships with other organizations to go out there and manage any new growth.
Will this be moved to the Oxbow Slough?
And yes, we are actually in the process of applying for a grant to do the same kind of project in Oxbow Slough. We have a grant site tour next Friday with the granting agency. So we're hoping to impress them and convince them to give us some money to do the work there.
Grossly needed, it will be obvious.
Yes. Well, right now it's just open water.
Yeah.
So it's like not the best time for a site tour, but
Late summer, it was thick.
yeah, we're kind of thinking, oh, well, it could have been better to go for this where the site tour would be in peak growing
I
season.
could send you a picture.
We have plenty. Thank you though.
Yeah, I have extra pictures too.
Our phase 3 restoration project, which is a floodplain forest restoration project in the south and west side of the conservation area is also wrapping up its grant funding in 2024, but it is far from being done. So we'll be also looking for more grant funding to continue that work. And final thing I wanted to update on is that the Bald Eagle Nest Monitoring Program is going to be back this year. We're getting that started up. Returning volunteers can kick off monitoring pretty much anytime. And new volunteers will have a training opportunity, I think the first weekend of February. And we'll be sending out information on that soon. I think that was all my updates and everything on the management plan.
Have any other questions?
I would like to say thank you. And that Bald Eagle program is an ambassadorship program. People observing frequently get asked by passersby what's going on, and they get an opportunity to explain the whole program and what's being observed and why, and the habits of the birds. It's a really good thing. Thank you for doing that.
Thanks, it's great to hear. It has been vastly successful. All right, well, thank you so much for your
Well, Thank
time.
you both. Appreciate it. Wonderful updates and great to see that move forward. We'll look to hear more toward the end of the year. All right, so that takes us through our presentations. We now have time for any board member updates, anything pertinent to Parks and Rec that you all have been working on or anything folks want to share. I will just kick off that I was able to participate in interviews for a chief communications officer for the city this last, I guess it was December, I want to say 18. And so they had a community panel, so I was able to represent SCRAB. There was someone from the library strategic board, a member of the council, someone from the revenue task force and others. And so I have not heard officially, I don't know if you all know if they've accepted. Okay.
I heard that we do have a new.
We do, okay, excellent. So there was a top choice coming out of that, and so it should be really exciting to have someone really coordinating communications for the city. And hopefully that's something, you know, we've talked about before. I think we don't talk enough about our parks in Salem. We don't talk enough about the great benefits and how that ties into everything else. So I stressed that during the interview, and I'm hopeful that we can stay in touch with this person just to promote the work of Parks and Rec a little bit. So that's my big update. Anything folks would like to share from your own time?
I would mention that I attended a tree planting with Friends of Trees in Lansing Park a week ago. And I was very impressed. I was pleased to volunteer and help plant half a dozen trees or so, but altogether there were 52 trees planted that day between Lansing Park and River Road Park. About a dozen over in River Road helped replace some that are needing replacing. An excellent job. Not only did we have, geez, I think there's probably 50, 75 people or better, and a good half of them, I think, came from Eugene. There's a link somehow that's happening, and Friends of Trees has really helped us out. It was a wonderful experience. They had organization and food and training, and they had crew buses for groups of every 5, and they were trained so that, and there's a demo given. These are not just holes dug and trees thrown in. We've got trees that are being prepared and planted properly so that they're going to grow. A little demonstration was given so we could be, everybody was going to be planting them to proper depth. They're going to be removing balls and whatever is necessary from the wrapping. It was all done right. And so I'm really pleased, not only with the participation in numbers, but the quality of the guidance and supervision, the welcoming. It was a good event. And I think we should be really grateful to Friends of Trees. Yeah.
Fantastic. Good for you for going out there. Thank you for doing that.
I will add that we work really closely with Friends of Trees, and they are under contract with the city, so they are getting paid.
Okay, well, they deserve it.
Yeah. And multiple events of the year working with us, but yeah, we enjoy working with their staff, and then I don't know if you saw.
Mike was out
some
there.
City staff out there too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, Mike was out there and spoke in appreciation of their efforts.
Yeah, we appreciate a couple more events with Friends of Trees, but
There's another one coming up, I see.
yeah, thanks for going.
Perfect. Any other update folks would like to share? Debbie.
Yeah, I just want to say that we're going to be at Nelson Park, which is one of my Swan neighborhood parks, going to be doing a tree planting mainly around the, it's very sunny around the playground there. I think they lost some trees. So we're going to be putting in some, I think, oaks and other kinds of trees along with the city of Salem next week. So that's something our neighborhood association is doing with the city.
That's-
I just have a question of Rob. The Fairview planning, when is that gonna start?
The Fairview planning is underway. It started this fall. We'd had some initial outreach. So just to back up a second, what we're doing at Fairview Park, which was master planned previously, and there was a master plan completed in 2016. Since 2016, the area has changed significantly. And what I mean by that is there's tons of new residents. We have single family residents, we have apartments right across the street, we have duplexes coming online right next to the park. None of these people had the opportunity to participate in that park master plan process. And also in the time since then, staff have been living with this master plan a little bit, and we see some things that are just maybe not quite right about it, that are maybe not feasible. So we're taking a step back and we're revisiting the master plan. And so this fall, we did some initial outreach with the community to ask, what would they like to see? What are their priorities? What are their concerns with the development of this park? And we've got quite a very successful outreach process so far, I would say. Really diverse and also in numbers that we've talked to. And now our consultant, Cameron McCarthy, is developing 2 options before how we could revisit and revision or reimagine what the park master plan looked like. And then in March, we'll be going back out to the community, sharing those 2 concepts. And by the end of the calendar year, we will have hopefully a new master plan updated by city council. And it will of course stop and come to this board first.
Yeah, I volunteered to be a liaison or whatever, and I haven't heard anything.
Yes, we're definitely gonna plug you in as we get into closer to March.
Okay.
And I apologize for not updating us sooner,
No
but yeah.
problem.
And it's the same, similarly with Fisher Road Park. I know we have some liaisons assigned to that park, and that's an active master plan. We will be doing some outreach with the SPRAD liaisons there and bring them up to speed with that.
Just a pause on this. I think we're getting into some stuff in the information report, so I just want to make sure everyone's okay with board member updates, and then we can move into the information reports. All right, hearing no more, we will, just as a reminder, we've moved to have the information report be kind of one large thing, so folks can basically pull out questions or thoughts you have. So Al, we'll go over to you next.
I just want to say thanks for the public hearing on that park revision plan. That's important, very important for our whole city to have that kind of communication, and then carrying them out is the second half of it. And I think that'll be a good thing too. Thanks. That's all.
Well, I will follow this thread on Fairview. I had a question from someone in the community about Old Strong Road. And somewhere along the process, they had heard that there might be removal of one of the paths that lead to that, that would go from being a paved path to more of a bark kind of soft path, therefore losing cycling, like bike access and things. Any thoughts you can share on that?
Yeah, just what the current condition is today, with Lindbergh Road is on the west side of the park, has been extended, and it now forms the edge, the western edge of the park. And it used to connect to Old Strong Road, and that connection no longer exists. Now we have a driveway access there for the future park access. And likewise on the Reed Road side, it's a similar situation. That intersection no longer exists. It's now a driveway apron. And so you have this old asphalt road that has driveway aprons on either side and are closed to this vehicular access. So that's the current condition. People are walking and riding their bikes on there constantly. I was just out there yesterday, and incredible amount of use just on that old roadway. The current master plan calls for us to have a shared use path through that corridor that potentially could be the reuse of a part of the road base. I don't expect that particular element of the master plan to change.
Okay.
So it will be carried forward. It is a fantastic opportunity for connectivity.
Seems smart. Appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions that folks want to pull out of the information reports, whether it's parks, recreation side, the natural resource planning update? I know I did notice the tree removals for Minto. Rob or Jen, did you just want to flag that so folks are aware if they get questions?
Yeah, I think you don't. I want to just make clear that you are all aware of that, those removals. I anticipate that they'll be a source of community interest as they occur. And so as we move to begin the construction of the parking lot improvements in Minto Island Park, especially in parking lot number 2, which is the one next to the dog park, we will be removing over 30 trees surrounding the dog park. And that sounds awful, but I just want to take a moment to talk about that. Most of those trees are European birch, and Miley could chime in, but they are not doing well. They're not native trees and they are not doing well. They have pests infecting them. And our increasingly dry summers are also impacting them. So they will be removed so that we can provide stormwater treatment and management in the new parking lot. And for every tree that's being removed, we will be planting a native tree in the park to replace it. So it doesn't sound like a awesome thing to go cut down a bunch of trees in Minto, but this is probably the best thing to do in the long term for the park.
They're not native trees, and they're infested already anyway.
Yes.
When you plant native trees, I don't know who this is a question for, but do you do a mix of varietals at this point? So you're not just running the risk of having the same single species getting impacted by a future disease?
Yeah, and as soon as that project can get started, the better with all the potholes that are in that parking lot that my car is trying to navigate every day.
I expect that the project will go out to public bid for a contractor this month. And then with the hopes that the contractor will start as soon as possible. And those tree removals are scheduled for February. So we are right at the cusp of.
In relation to the parking lot, where are those trees?
The European birch are directly to the east. So if you might
Okay.
think of some fir trees, some large fir trees, they're right in front of them.
Okay, yeah, is that gonna extend beyond the parking lot? Further south?
Yes, it will to a certain point. We are slightly increasing the length of the parking lot and we are creating a turnaround at the end. So if you might imagine, if you ever had a conflict with someone at the end, they're trying to turn around and can't figure that out, there'll be a turnaround for folks at the end.
My dog's favorite part of that park is the forest trail that goes along after the parking lot to the left and along there. She'd be very upset if those trees were all gone.
The tree removal stops at the end of the current parking lot.
Field, yes.
I'll relay that to her.
Or parking system.
Basically, any white bark birch tree will be removed adjacent to the.
And there are some other removals that are required. Some of them are ash, which are a non-native ash that are vulnerable to the new pests that are expected to arrive here soon. And then in parking lot number 3, we are removing 3 cottonwoods. And those, Mila had a fantastic idea that we would use the wood there to create turtle basking habitat in the adjacent slough.
Great. Any other questions or pieces folks would like to pull out of the information reports?
One quick question. Do you use any signage to notify park users what's happening? If you see them cutting trees down, like I was concerned, there's some for temporary signs to explain, not in great detail, but these trees have been removed because of this, and native trees have been replaced, and may cut down on some of those squirrely questions.
That's a great question. Under the chapter 86, the city tree code, we are required to post notice and we intend to do that, but we're gonna be adding a little bit more explanation on those notices. And most importantly, a QR code and a short URL link where people can find more information on the city's website. So we are preparing a webpage on the city's website, talking in more detail about what we're doing and why the tree removals are occurring.
Great idea.
Maybe time well spent to avoid unnecessary answering emails.
Yes.
Oh, it shows it's being
On the
proactive.
26th.
Yes, we are planning to post on the 26th.
Can I ask a question?
Not right, well, it's. Well, like next. It depends if it's more of a clarification.
No, I'm just wondering, are they gonna close that parking lot for the tree removal?
Half of the parking lot.
Half the parking lot.
Yes.
Yeah, and they'll close the whole thing when you do the paving. Yeah.
We'll come back with more information about the situation while the contractor is working. We're trying to minimize impacts to park users, but there are gonna be.
That is the most used parking lot on.
Yeah, well, they can move to 3 for a while.
But there will be periods when one of those 2 parking lots will be completely closed. So we'll have more information on that for you soon.
The last time they did an expansion there, we all had to park in parking lot 3 and then on leash, take them over to the, well, some people did on leash. going over.
All for the greater good, right? The turnaround will be nice. That's a nice added feature. All right, well, let's move into our new business. I had two items I wanted to bring up for new business. One is the climate action plan, which we mentioned last time, the city has hired a manager for the climate action plan. And so I was talking with Rob. We're hopefully going to get that individual to join us at our next meeting in February to talk about the process and now that they're in place, where that's moving forward. And the hope is that we as SPRAD can be fairly active on that. And so there's, if you all have looked at it, there's a very long list of natural resource strategies in the climate action plan. And I think this is an opportunity for us to do some research, figure out ideas from other cities and states, and figure out some ideas that the staff can hopefully take on and this climate action plan manager can adopt. So Rob, I think that's still a plan. So we'll aim for a February meeting on that, and then hopefully all of us can start having some homework. You'll all remember that at the retreat, we talked about trying to be a little bit more proactive and giving ourselves some work to do in terms of coming back with ideas and using our volunteer time as much as possible to inform city processes. One of the more timely things that is coming up is the revenue conversation. So last time we heard about the revenue generation task force. Keith is not here today, but he did put his name in it, so he was nominated to participate in that.
And he's in the group.
He is, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So Keith is gonna be part of that, which is fantastic. And Rob had requested that we as SPRAB could look into some revenue generation ideas and really trying to think about what are ideas on the park system. If we look, even if you're just Googling, creative park revenue ideas, there's lots of groups out there, Trust for Public Lands and Nature Conservancy and national nonprofits that have oftentimes put together reports, or cities that have had spotlights, where just us doing a little bit of digging between now and the next meeting, I think potentially bring some ideas forward that can help city staff. But I'll turn it over to you two if you'd like to add any direction in terms of the type of things that would be helpful.
I'll add on that revenue generation idea. It's also about what should be the city's policy. What are the sideboards for us? Where are we going too far with those kind of ideas? I'll pick something, just an idea of advertising. When is it too far? That's, I think, would be helpful to us.
That's tough.
Well, we'll give you the hard work, right?
I know we've seen this with the bike research that we did and others, that sometimes you can find quite a bit. I know that it's helpful. So I think it's a somewhat soft ask right now, but I think if everyone could commit to even looking a little bit, we'll add this as an agenda item for next month to revisit and see if folks were able to come up with anything. I would encourage, if you do find things that you want to compile at a time, you can send those to Leanne and we can share those out as a reference point for all of us. But we'll keep that conversation going, and I'm really hoping with the climate action plan, we can have some really tangible projects to work on, and all of us can add our contributions, and we'll see some great things implemented as a result. Any questions or thoughts on that? Hearing none. Any other new business items folks would like to raise? Hearing none. We've gotten through everything fairly efficiently, so I thank you all. We have set up a good basis for the year. We have some projects underway. We have our minutes and we have elections. So I appreciate everyone's time. Great to see you in person. See you in February. Meeting's adjourned.